I wanted to talk a little bit about really an aspect of the mind. I've been reading a book called, the book is entitled Letting Go, The Path to Surrender by David R. Hawkins, or Hawkins, I'm sorry, Hawkins. David Hawkins lived in Sedona for, I think, the last maybe 40 years of his life, at least 35 at least. And he was based out of Sedona. He originally came out of Milwaukee. He spent some time in New York, I believe, but he has some very, very interesting techniques in the field of psychotherapy and psychiatry. He was a doctor, an MD, a PhD in psychiatry, and he had some awakening moments when he was younger, and it's very interesting, his story about awakening and how it progressed throughout his life and what it did for his life. He's helped a lot of people. He passed away in, I believe, 2013, and I didn't get a chance to meet him. I wish I would have made the trip. He used to do some teachings, I think it was on Monday nights in Sedona. And at that time, this was a while ago, it cost $100 to get in, but it was, Wayne Dyer would show up and all these other people. And you might have heard of him with his kinesthetic or his muscle testing that he really perfected. And he used it extensively in these areas of heightened awareness and how we could use the truth, which is muscle testing, to use the truth to go through these levels of consciousness. It's very, very interesting stuff. And so I started reading this book. I actually bought it for my fiancée, Terry, and I bought it for her birthday, which was at the beginning of May, and it sat on the desk for a while. She's reading something else, so I started picking it up, and I started reading it, and I go, wow, this is really a good book. And then now, when I read a book, especially if it's nonfiction, well, I don't read nonfiction. I don't read fiction. I read nonfiction, and this, of course, is nonfiction. And I usually underline all these important things, or I highlight them, and I refrain from doing that for about the first few sittings of reading it, and then now I brought out the pencil and I'm starting to underline all these important things because it's a very, very good book. Every time I pick up a new book, and I'm always thinking, well, this is the greatest book in the world, but this one is very, very good. It's probably one of the, if I was to encourage and recommend a book, this would be it. Truly, this is a very incredible book. It's called Letting Go, and it covers a lot of aspects. You think, how can a person write a, 400-page, book, about 400 pages on letting go? And David Hawkins does that, and he does it very, very well. One area that I was reading last night, he's talking about fear, and we've been, I did a couple of talks about fear lately, and fear is an interesting thing, and how it can be related to, I relate it to time. Those of you that know me and have heard me talk, I relate fear to the future, a resentment or ill will or anger to the past, and of course this is the present moment, and with the idea that time is a construct, and we've all heard that, but what does that mean? It means that we construct our time, and particularly our meaning behind it. Now, I'm the same person that I was in many ways 40 or 60 years ago, for that matter. But I am not the same person. I look a lot different than I did 40 years ago. And I know that because I can pull up some pictures of me, 40 years ago. I can look at these pictures and go, yeah, that's me, but that's when I was that age. But another way to do that, of course, is through memory. I can vaguely remember looking in the mirror and seeing myself 40, 50 or more years ago, and seeing how I looked then, even 10 years ago, even a few years ago. I can remember looking in the mirror and seeing that I looked different. Not necessarily any better or any worse, just different, as far as my perception goes. And so that is memory. That is the mind creating that, the mind remembering these things. And anytime that we think about what might happen in the future, we can all agree, but that is the mind creating our future. We hope it'll be there. It might happen the way that we currently create it in the mind. Chances are it won't. Hopefully, if we have a goal in mind and something that we are manifesting, that it will materialize the way we want it to. But even manifesting and creating, generally we want to look at it in detail and then just put it away, and just say, okay, that's it, we'll see what happens. And then voila, that's when the manifestation comes about for us. As long as we're striving and desiring for something to happen, as long as we're desiring, that word desire means that we don't have it. We don't have it yet. So as long as we desire for something, we will never have it. So, and that's one of the dangers of desire. So again, when I think of fear, I think of future. When I think of anger, I think of past. And many other things, grief and guilt. Guilt is really something that is related to anger. And David Hawkins was talking about guilt and I'm not anger, I'm sorry, but guilt and fear are closely related. So I have to back up and clarify that. Guilt and fear are closely related, and in my mind, they're related completely to the future. We can't be fearful now, and we can't be fearful of something that happened in the past because we're familiar with it. Fear is something that we fear will happen in the future, and guilt is related to it. So the guilt that comes along with fear, and there's a lot of guilt happening now in our world, and if it's controlled guilt, it works so well that we can be guilty for walking around. Let's say that somebody imposed a curfew and we're walking around past 8 o'clock, like I was last night. I went for a walk and I was on my way back home, and I'm thinking, oh man, it's after 8 o'clock and I'm out here walking, not realizing it. I suppose I could get arrested. I didn't feel guilty, but I could have felt guilty. So it's imposed guilt. And so the only thing that keeps us in line is that feeling of guilt. Oh, there's a curfew, it's 8 o'clock, I should go inside. I'm going inside, see you later. That kind of thing. So it's guilt that keeps us in line. And if it's imposed by somebody else, it works so smoothly. We can have guilt, let's look at the pandemic. And I want to make it perfectly clear that I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, or being careful of a virus or not being careful. But I'm just using this as an example because this is something that most of us, or probably all of us in the world, can relate to at this moment, for the most part anyway. Let's say that we are not wearing a mask and we walk into a store and we look around and everybody is wearing a mask. I mean, everybody except for you. What happens? There's this guilt that comes up. We start thinking, oh, I wish I would have brought a mask and put it in my pocket, or maybe I have a mask in my purse or something like this. Or, gee, I wish I would have brought a mask. Or do we feel guilty for not washing our hands? because we are coming home and our partner's at home. We don't want to, okay, I touched a few things, and I certainly touched my steering wheel. I touched all sorts of stuff. Let me just wash my hands, and then it's kind of like we're washing the guilt away. I think some of us are probably experiencing that. Washing, literally washing the guilt off of our hands. And it can happen the other way too. We can feel guilty for wearing a mask. If I walked into to see my father and I'm wearing a mask, and he says, what are you wearing that mask for? You don't have to do that. It's like, it's okay, Dad, I have to wear this mask. I owe it to you and I owe it to me. And he says, well, take that silly thing off. And I say, no, I will feel guilty if I'm not wearing it because of, somebody says I should be wearing it. Or somebody says that I don't have to wear it is the same thing. Or somebody says that you don't have to wash your hands. Don't feel guilty for not washing your hands. So it's self-imposed, and it can be very manipulating for us. So that's something to keep in mind. But along with this fear, the opposite, according to many people, including myself and David Hawkins, when we look at it, the opposite of fear is love. And let me tell you why. I'm going to read something out of this book here, Letting Go. The subtitle, by the way, is The Pathway of Surrender, which I think is a very good subtitle, and is a good segue into this little reading that I'm going to do here. We have the unconscious fantasy that fear is keeping us alive. This is because fear is associated with our whole set of survival mechanisms. We have the idea that if we were to let go of fear, our main defense mechanism, we would become vulnerable in some way. In reality, the truth is just the opposite. Fear is what binds us to the real dangers of life. In fact, fear itself is the greatest danger that a human body faces. It is fear and guilt that bring about disease and failure in every area of our lives. So he goes on to say, and I had to read this a couple of times, he says, we could take the same protective actions out of love rather than out of fear. And I looked at that and I go, what is this? And I'll read it again. We could take the same protective actions out of love rather than out of fear. So this is what he says about that. Can we not care for our bodies because we appreciate and value them rather than out of fear of disease and dying? Can we not be of service to others in our life out of love rather than out of fear of losing them? Can we not be polite and courteous to strangers because we care for our fellow human beings rather than because we fear losing their good opinion of us? Can we not be or not do a good job because we care about the quality of our performance and we care about our fellow workers? Can we not perform our job well because we care about the recipients of our services rather than just the fear of losing our jobs or pursuing our own ambition? Can we not accomplish more by cooperation rather than by fearful competition? Can we not drive carefully because we have a high regard for ourselves and care for our welfare and those that we love, rather than just because of fear of an accident? On a spiritual level, isn't it more effective if, out of compassion and identification with our fellow human beings, that we care for them rather than trying to love them out of fear of God's punishment if we don't, or out of any kind of punishment if we don't love them? So that we care for them rather than trying to have this guilt for not loving. And so I read that and I thought, that's pretty profound in a couple of different ways. One of them, from my perspective, when we look at how I impose time on fear and love. In other words, this is the future based and the present moment. So he's saying that rather than, well, let me use one of these as an example. Can we not care for our bodies because we appreciate and value them rather than out of fear of disease and dying? So that fear is imposing a future that there is going to be, or there could be disease and there could be dying as a result of our not caring for our bodies. And we could get the same outcome if we love ourselves and rest in this present moment. And we'll find that true with all of these. Can we not be of service to others in our life out of love rather than out of fear of losing them? That losing them is being of service for somebody now so that we don't lose them in the future, rather than just having this love for them in this present moment. And and that's true with every one of these examples. Particularly, again, that last one. On a spiritual level, isn't it more effective if out of compassion and identification with our fellow human beings, that we care for them rather than trying to love them out of fear of God's punishment if we don't? That fear from God's punishment is the fear of our predicament that some people believe in a hell realm, or that God will punish us after this lifetime. So it's future based, rather than just trying to love and having that compassion and that love in this present moment, right now. And that has a lot to do with our meditation practice and what we're trying to achieve with our meditation. And we can feel that when we come into this present moment, which is what meditation is all about. And it's also about letting go too, which is happening at that same moment. We cannot let go in the future. We cannot let go in the past. We have to let go in this present moment. But it happens naturally by our awareness. So again, when we rest in this present moment, we call this our Buddha nature, our innate nature, our true self, our true identity, who we really are. Resting in this stillness of this present moment, and in doing so in meditation, what it does is points to the fact that we can have this compassion, we can have this love, and we can experience all of these things right now without even trying to do anything. So it's not future based. We don't have to have any guilt about doing this particular thing in the future, or asking for this, or trying this, or performing in a certain way now so that we don't lose something in the future, where everything is just instant. Time is a construct. It's a construct of our own mind. We created ourselves. The only thing that's really happening is this present moment. And we can prove that to ourselves again and again. It seems like time is moving along, and by all rights it is, but it is the construct that we make in the mind that impacts us with our future and our past, that creates our future and our past. And so the main message, the invitation here for our meditation is to feel this love in this present moment. If there's any kind of fear that comes up, you're not being present. This is one of the hindrances. If there's any kind of anger, you're not being present. You're imposing something on the past. And if there's any kind of a desire, as I mentioned earlier, this desire is either a desire for things to be different, which is future imposed, or the desire for some kind of a completion, or the desire for things to be different in any aspect. So if we are desire-free, we are free from wanting things to have any kind of change happening to them. And because this change will happen whether we want it to or not, believe me, we know that in the Buddhist teaching of impermanence. So please make yourself comfortable. I'll guide us through some of this meditation. And it'll be about a half-hour meditation with about 10 minutes of guiding. Please close your eyes. Take a nice deep breath and really feel that breath inside the body. This is a time for going within. And what does that mean, going within? It means being aware, being aware of what arises and falls away moment by moment. This could be the body sensations, and it could be feelings themselves, the pleasantness or unpleasantness that accompany every one of our senses, our visualizations when our eyes are closed, our hearing, our smell, our taste, touch, which means they're kinesthetic feelings within the body. And all these feelings are sensations. We can recognize them as bodily sensations, but they're very simple. They're either pleasant or unpleasant, something that we want more of or something that we want less of. And these feelings are always there. There's always a feeling that arises in association with one of our senses, including what the Buddha referred to as the sixth sense, and that is our thoughts. We can have a pleasant thought or an unpleasant thought. Or more, to put it more precisely, we can think of something and there will be a pleasantness associated with it or an unpleasantness associated with it. When these feelings are consistent, which they are, and they happen, we could say, in an abundance, then we can notice a state or a mood and emotion that follows a series of feelings. If we're continually let down moment by moment, let's say we're having a bad day, we will eventually have a state or an emotion or mood that relates to that. We can get angry or sad, upset, confused, bitter. We can shut down all these different things that can happen. If there's a great deal of pleasantness associated with feelings, if we're in an area that everything is beautiful, we're outside and there's a beautiful river and beautiful trees, everything is very enjoyable, nice weather, nice company. And then our moods and emotions, our states will be affected. and we'll experience joy, happiness, bliss as a coincidence or as a outcome of these feelings. And there's always a mood and emotion present at every given moment. Probably even while we sleep, if we could be aware of it in such a way. And when we sit in meditation, we can notice these things. Body sensations, feelings, states. And we can watch them. We can see them come and go. And we can even detach ourselves from them in a healthy way. And that's one of the wonderful things about meditation, is that it teaches us about our inner going-ons. This is the practice of going within. We want to learn as much about ourselves within as we possibly can. The wonderful thing about this is that most of this practice, this study, this investigation of ourselves within is done in the present moment. It's done right now. In meditation, we aren't trying to visit the future and create something in the future. And we're not trying to revisit the past for any reason. This can happen. The mind can go back and recall something, a memory. The result is that there could be a feeling, an emotion, a state that comes out of that. But as long as we are aware of it and know where it came from, how it came about, then we are learning. And generally what happens is that the mind will realize that there's more important things to do. Just resting in this present moment, noticing what is happening right now without having to go into the past or the future, simply because the mind realizes that it's just creating this. It's creating the past, the anger. It's creating the fear of the future. Unnecessarily. So we can have compassion for ourselves and for others in this present moment without imposing why we are doing it. So it has nothing to do with what happens in the future. We're just doing it out of love for ourselves and love for others right now. We're not doing it because of some consequence of the future. We're not doing it because we'll feel guilty if we don't do it. If the world's gone crazy, it's gone crazy because of what people are imposing, what might happen in the future. If everybody would sit back and rest in this presence, the stillness of the present moment, there would not be any craziness. There wouldn't be any anger or fear. There wouldn't be any guilt. There wouldn't even be any grief. So we practice this in meditation, and then we expand these moments of presence in the outer world when we're conversing with people or working, whatever it might be. And in meditation, if we have a wandering mind, we can use our concentration to focus on a subject or a target, which we call the meditation object. And in most cases, this is the breath. So we focus on the breath. And when we do, we are present. But when we notice a sensation in the body, we are also present. So when we notice a feeling, a pleasantness within the body associated with one of our senses, we are present. And when we ask ourselves, what mood or emotion am I experiencing at this moment, we are present. So we can sit in silence for the next 20 minutes. Notice when you are present, and more importantly, when you're not, because you can notice it within the body, either way. But it's all a work in progress. If we feel fear within the body, going to the body, whether it's the breath or the feeling itself, is being present. And we can have that non-worldly feeling of joy and love within us as well. That brings us into the stillness of this present moment as well. Bring your palms together in front of you, if you like. It's a short metta practice. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. May we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. And may we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or difficulties that we might face in life. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay, that was, like I mentioned, it was a half-hour meditation, about 20 minutes of 10 minutes of guiding and about 20 minutes of silence. I appreciate it, all of you that were able to, stay with it. Meditation is one of those things where we don't necessarily go for duration, but more consistency, than anything else. Just a little recap on what we talked about. The point is, to sum things up, I guess, that when we are present moment awareness is love itself. It is love, and it's unconditional love. Conditional love is a different animal altogether. We put conditions on things, and again, that's looking for something in the future. I love you if you'll love me back, or if you love me in the future more. I'll love you now if we can have this future together, that kind of thing. Unconditional love is actually surrender. It's being able to let go of our attachment to people, to things. And it is nothing but pure awareness. It is nothing but pure stillness and this presence that we're talking about. And love, for ourselves is very important, and we should understand that first, and then be able to spread that out to others. And I don't mean necessarily in a metta or loving kindness way, like in a Buddhist practice, but I mean genuine love for our human beings and all inhabitants of the earth. All beings, because they are us. We are not separate from anyone or anything in the world. And if we hate something out there, there's a piece of us that we hate, and we can experience that. And we know that hate or ill will or any kind of negativity very much harms us. It doesn't harm the person that we hate, it harms us inside. And so there must be something within us that we're not happy with when we are hating somebody else or not getting along with somebody, that type of thing. If we don't see eye to eye with somebody, that is something altogether different, because we can still love somebody and not agree with everything that they do and say. These things happen, but we have to be very, very conscious. We have to be very, very much aware of what is happening in the body when we're associating and conversing with that person or that thing, knowing that if we're very in tune with what is happening inside, this practice of going within, we will understand what is happening outside and why things aren't going the way in the flow, so to speak, as we would like them to go. And it'll all get figured out naturally, just by that awareness alone. So we do have to tune in with the body. We do have to be sensitive to the body, how these feelings come up. These feelings, again, are associated with our moods and our emotions, our states. And they tell a lot. They can help us a lot. The life that we live seems like our own, seems like ours, but it's more of a global thing. We perceive, our senses go out like tentacles, and they touch the world, and they send back feelings to us. And for the most part, that is a survival mechanism. That is part of the fight or flight mechanism that we all have. But we can learn a lot from it. That's what I'm trying to say here, is that we can learn a lot by tuning in on these senses, these sensations, from our senses that come into our body and spell things out for us, tell us things. And these are our feelings. And through the Buddhist tradition, Buddhist sutras and stories, many people have become fully enlightened and very, very much awakened, by understanding their feelings. When we feel an attachment, for example, towards something, we can feel that within the body. When we feel anger, we can feel it. When we feel happiness, we can feel it. And so before we connect with something out in the world and say, this is what I want, and the tentacle goes out, we can put that wedge of awareness in between this and getting that thing out there. Because once we get that thing, it'll be completely different than what our mind imposes on it. And that has to do, with not only our desires, but what we want out of somebody and something in the area of like I was talking before, in the area of being what's the word I'm looking for? Feeling guilty, for not fulfilling something or for not connecting with something or doing something in the right way. That guilt is something that we certainly feel within the body, and there can be healthy reasons for doing something and not doing something. But if it's imposed by somebody or somebody else that we feel guilty because of something that's going to happen in the future, then we want to surely be aware of that and understand that. Because everything that we want to do, if we do it based on love and how we feel now in the present moment, and everything will be so much worthwhile, and it'll make our life so much more complete, rather than doing something so that the future will benefit from it. That's not to say that we shouldn't be striving, for a better future for ourselves and for others. But I'm talking about, particularly this emotion of love, and how important it is to experience it and be a part of it and do it now. Be aware of it now. Have that awareness. So I will leave it at that. Next week, I don't think there'll I don't think there will be any curfews or anything like that. So the Meditation Learning Center will be open if you're in the Mesa area. I know a lot of people, the outlining areas, people from really all over the United States, and we've had some people, outside of the United States, in Europe and stuff, and there's a time zone difference, so that can be a problem. A lot of people should be sleeping right now in other parts of the world, but these streams are recorded, they're edited, and then they're put back into YouTube as a regular video, so they can be watched at any time. And if you have any questions about anything that was spoke about tonight, please contact me, Shane at meditationlearningcenter.com. And I don't know, let's leave it at that. I love you. Feel that within you in this present moment. And let's just make it a better world. We can do that. and we prove it to ourselves all the time when we meditate. So let that be our guide. All right. Thank you.